Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today we have a very, very special guest, Sister Asha Sekhmet, who is the founder of the Mahi community. And we're going to talk about functional polyamory. And hopefully we'll get into some tantra talk in our brief discussion today. And so we are continuing this series on alternative living in many respects. And so we'll deal a lot with the polyamory in this discourse. So it's going to be a lively discussion. Make sure you have your pen and paper ready, and make sure that you like the video as well as share it with friends and colleagues. All of that and more when we return in just a moment. And we are back. I want to thank each and every one of you again for joining this conversation. And, it's been a while since I've been doing the shows. That's because school has all of my time at the moment. But, every now and then I'm going to sneak in and do the 1-2-1-2. So I appreciate every one of you for being patient with the MBONGI. And so, but I'll never stop, introducing you to very lively and creative and intelligent and dynamic people. And so, with that being said, I want to now introduce to you our guest once again, who is going to be Asha Sekhmet. And I'm just going to read a little bit of her bio from her website. So, Sister Asha Sekhmet is an oracle, tantra practitioner, thought leader, and fashion designer. In 2019, she was introduced to a spiritual community founded on indigenous ways of life, natural law, and began womanhood initiations. Asha's purpose in life is to lead modern women into sacred womanhood initiations, to heal men through the practice of tantra, and develop the community infrastructure for polyamory worldwide. Asha formed the Mahi community on May 2024, and the Mahi community life system is an indigenous way of life to become closer to the creator without strict religious doctrine or according to natural law. And polyamory, which is the subject of our discourse today, is the family structure that we practice. Now, I know I said alternative at the beginning of our conversation, but I should say that this is actually the default, the more traditional system and way of being in terms of family dynamics. And so we're going to get into all of that. And I want all of you to put a hand together and welcome our sister, Asha Sekhmet, to the MBONGI. Peace and blessing. How are you doing?
I am doing great, brother Asar. Thank you so much for having me on your channel. It's a blessing to be here.
Appreciate you. Well, first and foremost, since you are new to the MBONGI community, just give us a little bit about yourself, and what were the experiences and thought processes that led you to become the woman who you are today.
Yes. Okay, that's such a great question. I always start my origin story in my foundation with growing up with a strong Black father. My father has been the most influential person in my life. My father is someone that I would consider a very high man of integrity. He's a family man, and he is a man of many children. So, in some ways, I grew up in some form of dysfunctional polygamy, although my family probably, of course, wouldn't consider it that in some ways. But when I talk to them about my work, of course, and what the things that what it really is, then they could see, oh, okay, yeah, my dad has those roots in his DNA too. But I learned a lot about just knowledge of self and just always acquiring more to learn about my culture and who I am, about my ancestry and particularly. And I learned a lot of that through my father. So my origin story started out of that. And I wouldn't be the woman I am today if it was not for my father instilling in me just principles in life that I still carry in terms of just always getting better, acquiring more knowledge, and having a good relationship with the Creator at the center of everything that I do. So, all praises to my father and my mother as well. I have a good relationship with my mother. And then I would just say that when I graduated college in 2019, I had a degree in biology, and then I was after I decided that I would not go into pre med. That's when I found my teacher that would then help me go through my 7 year initiation and for me to learn everything that I know now about indigenous wisdom and tantra. And so my teacher was Master Yao Morris. And I started my initiations after that as well, in terms of incorporating tantra, getting certified in tantra, and then my womanhood initiations, completing wifehood initiations. And then once I was completed in 2023, I then started the I am Asha Sekhmet brand. And then then following year, I got remarried and started the Mahi community. So my journey has really been about me going through the 7 year initiation that I went through to learn indigenous wisdom and take that life system that I learned and build a sovereign community and nation build with that life system out of the concept of group marriages like polygamy, polyamory, and etc. So that's I hope that answered your question kind of short in a short way.
Indeed, yes. Now, I'm familiar with the name Sekhmet as a student of um, Egyptology, African languages and cultures and things. But what does the name Asha mean? And was this a birth name, or was this something that you have defined yourself as, using that combination?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. I would say,
Mhm.
well, the name Sekhmet was given to me, and it has a lot to do with my purpose, which is um, restore back balance, right, and to bring back the indigenous life system. So we know the mythologies of Sekhmet, right, which is the divine goddess of healing and war and destruction. But through that, she's trying to enforce the laws of Ma'at. Right. So when you look at the mythologies of Sekhmet, it wasn't necessarily like she was just, someone that just caused mayhem for no reason, right? She was sent by Ra when humans were going against God. So she was sent to restore back order. So sometimes you need destruction in order to rebuild. And so that's where the name Sekhmet comes from. And that deals with my purpose, right? So restoring back the laws of Ma'at and, reciprocity, justice, cosmic order, and harmony. And so Asha means truth. And so putting those together, it aligns with my purpose.
Ashe. Um, like the Imhotep part of my name was given to me actually when I pledged in college, way back in the day,
Mhm.
to my fraternal order. That's my line name,
Mhm.
Imhotep, and I added Asar,
Okay.
some years later, and which is interesting because sometimes you'll see my name, Osir, and there's a reason why.
Mhm.
You'll find both of these names of me online, Asar and Osir. So Asar is how I first came across the name, but Osir is what I've come to know it as in terms of its correct pronunciation.
Mhm.
And I have an article that's coming out in a text on Shekhmet Diop. I have a chapter in there. It's an edited text, which I go through all the details of how that is. But so I'll let the MBONGI community know when that text is released in 2026. But outside of that, let's get back to our guest. Um, so you kind of flew through a statement earlier. So you said you got remarried. So I know you're married now. So you was married prior.
Mhm.
Okay, was you married to someone else prior to that, or were y'all saying y'all had a new ceremony or something like that with the same individuals? The two, okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah. So I was in a 7-year marriage. I got married early on in my life. I was 19 years old. So that for 7 years, and through that 7 years is when I went through initiations. I did all that in the midst of that first marriage with him. And then I was remarried in 2024 with my current husband, and we practice polyamory now. So the different stages of even the different types of polygamy I went through just in my two separate marriages, and then I have had experience with being a second wife in a polygamous family as well. So that was not for a long period of time. It was for a shorter period of time, but I did get an experience with that as well. But like I said, everything was always to bring me back to what I'm doing, so that sometimes experience can be our best teachers, right? So it just makes sense with my life path and involvement, right? So that's where I am today.
Ashe. And so the question, because we've talked about this on this channel quite a few times. So the first time we had Brother Solomon on, so you had a male perspective, and he was in or is involved with two women, but they're located in different parts of the world, and they have businesses and things that they got going on. And then we had Dr. Susan Tata, and we had her for two reasons. So one, for to talk about polygamy from an indigenous African perspective, and also because she was a child of an indigenous village, polygamous marriage. So what
Mm,
is that perspective? So now we have someone who, although you say, in the negative sense, in terms of your father, in terms of polyamory, um, but as an adult and someone who's conscious and educated,
mhm,
and it's like, the questions that are often given are, why would you be involved in such a system?
mhm,
And the question I would add to that is, well, given your second marriage,
mhm,
to the person who you're married to currently,
mhm,
whose idea was it to have a polygamous
mhm,
marriage? Was it just something that y'all kind of met on that plane,
mhm.
or was it you gave the idea, or him? How did that come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, All right. So in my current marriage, my husband, he had children prior to me. So coming into this, we're already entering a concept of polygamy. Whether people want to call it blended families, all these are modern Western terms that we put on it, but these are various forms of practicing polyamory. So I can't, but I did that by choice, right? Like I wanted someone who already had children and who understood like certain family skills. So it made sense. Me and my husband, his name is Oais El Masor, and he's an herbalist. He owns a company called Supreme Wellbeing, and we came together. I wanted to learn more about entrepreneurship, and I had went through my initiations. I learned about husband sharing in my first marriage, practiced that. I had my experience. I went through my formal trainings. So I was like, okay, I'm ready for this, right? My husband, he has always had women around. He has, multiple, children of women that he had children by. So it's like coming into that, I had to be equipped, right, to deal with this from a perspective of like family skills, right? Because if we look at especially we're talking about here in America, like Black Americans and the way that, family dynamics and everything is happening, it's various forms of poly, just dysfunctional. If that's just what multiple baby mamas, baby daddies, if that's a norm in your community, that means that you all are just do not have an awareness and a culture intact to what you're doing. But that's what it is. But we know, of course, about, Ma'afa. We know that what has been done to, Black people historically. So we've lost aspects of our culture and the indigenous wisdom behind the sacred family practices that we have. But along with that came with us getting indoctrinated with Western and white culture and ideology and how they do things, which will cause a lot of problems to us, especially for Black women. Like when we look at the center of like us being communal and family minded, but we've been taught to think like white women. We don't procreate like them, right? We have a lot more children and bigger families by and large than white people. So that means by God design, polygamy was best suited for Black people. That's that all conclusions have brought me to that in my life's work. And I know how the Creator is moving through me to say like this is the truth. And I'm like, everything points to that. All roads for Black people lead to polygamy. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. So in terms of me and my husband, it's not even rather an idea, it's rather we're already doing it. How do we do this functionally? That it really comes down to that. So that's really when we paired, it made a lot of sense in terms of what I needed, in terms of my growth and development on entrepreneurship. I'm only going to marry a Black man, right? And my husband, he had children prior to me and things like that. So that means that we're coming into this union. I'm already sharing my husband, right? And it's like, how do you come together with other women in a community, right, that you share your husband with? How do you share your husband with, the children and other people in the community? My husband even have relationships with Black women in our community that are just, business relationships. They can be friendships. This gets into the functional polyamory part, right? And so I, as a wife, I have to be equipped to know how to share my husband with women in my community, his gifts, right? And he's a healer. So I have to be, that's really where it came down to, like studying my husband's his nature, like this is in his DNA, right? And so we come together and I'm like, okay, this is what it is. And so I just shared with him, of course, my initiations and the indigenous knowledge that I had. And so it could just connect some of the dots with people who may have not understood him. They may have misunderstood his nature, and his calling on his life. He always had women around, but that's a beautiful thing because he's a healer, So it comes from that too. And then on my end, it made sense because I didn't realize that I was practicing functional polyamory from a perspective of like healing men in my community as well as a tantra practitioner. So I needed a man that could also understand my purpose and look at it from a lens of like, this is a very professional practice, but it is a sacred practice too, in tantra. And it's not my specific focus had been, of course, Black men, because, just you all, in terms of the American experience is so much work there that I feel called to do. That's my purpose. And I think Black men get left out, those conversations with healing and talking about being, the forefront of, entrepreneurship and being our leaders of our community. There's a lot of attention that gets towards, Black women doing very well, but I'm here to help the Black man rise. So that's my work in tantra too.
Indeed, indeed. So what has in terms of, because we mentioned that you do coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and you help both men and women navigate this particular space. And so the question now is, what are some of the major challenges that you face as a teacher, and as the, for lack of a better term, the students, come to you in terms of mindset, that bump heads initially, but that you help them to navigate through?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So I think the main barrier that I was, I had some type of preparation for it, but going into it is like I see how deep it is, and it really is the Western parasitic mind of individualistic like thinking, and it is so subliminal and it's so deep. Indoctrination is like, I have to work through it, my husband have to work through it, we all have to work through this because we haven't been taught communal mindsets in America, and particularly for Black people. Otherwise, we would be sovereign. So anyone who says like, because it's a like, I think that there's people who genuinely thinks that they are community minded, but from doing the work, like working with people in community, and where we're practicing these group marriages, you come to see that they're not fully aware of the subliminal programming of this individualism that they're still fighting with, right? It's like, I can't remember which scholar said this, but I love some of her work. I have to look back at what her work was, but she would say like, fighting that white person in me. How humble are we to continue to say this? So on a perspective of, I was born into like what the third this is like the third or fourth wave feminism in America. So that means as a Black woman, I was indoctrinated with that. So I have to study that, and I have to go within to reprogram and do all of that. My same thing with my husband. My husband talks from the perspective as a Black man and reprogramming, patriarchy ideologies and how he view his women, and thinking like a white man. Like, these are real things. Like, in terms of, we living in a Western world, we speak English, right? This is not my native language. So it's like, with considering that, the source of a lot of our problems is going to even just start there, like in the mind of consciousness, like our thoughts, and like who we think we are, and who we were taught to be. Like, we have to reconfigure and reconstruct everything we think we know about marriage, relationships, sex, and who we think we are. So I think for me, it's really that, the getting through the individual mindset to a community centered African and indigenous mindset.
Indeed, indeed. Um, the well, this always comes up, and I think I didn't catch it live, but it came up on my feed sometime after a kind of a recent live that you and your husband had on. Well, I'm pretty sure it was on multiple platforms, but I saw it on Facebook, and y'all were talking about, he was kind of outlining these four major, points dealing, in part dealing with the economics, of polygamy and polyamory and the like. And I want you to kind of go into that, but also if you can kind of dispel myths, because I'm pretty sure men, like, men and women, we have two different approaches to this. So it'll seem like men would be more for it, but women would be more against it here in the United States. And so with that being the case, questions I always get is, well, can the women have multiple you know, husbands and da 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 da, and can we da da da. So what are the different dynamics, you know, and types of polygamy that you promote within your community, and tie that into the economic space, you know, that y'all were talking about on the live?
Okay. Yes. So this is where we get into the difference with functional polyamory. And this was revealed to me because a lot of my education came out of husband sharing. So, right, like practicing the traditional polygyny. But I was revealed that you would get a lot of problems in a community, like if you just did that. Because in terms of like where we are today, right? Like let's say, okay, like later down the line, after we got through all this westernization and broke all this down for men and women in the community, then we could get more to a harmonious, functional, you know, situation like that. But what I have come across is that it's preventing the brotherhood if you are if I had just said, no, we're just doing this, right? Like we're just doing this, even though husband sharing is more common and it makes, of course, practical sense, right? Like husband sharing, but it does not mean that it's not in some women's life purpose to have multiple husbands. And that only comes from God. And no man could deny that. That makes you a misogynist. And some men do come from polygamy from a misogynistic ideology, and they may not even be aware of it. But it comes back to bite them through their bloodline when they have women in the community that turns into feminists. And see, then we get this ripple and cycle effect. It's like, how do we achieve my okay? So my answer really to you is functional polyamory is what we have with the Mahi community in particular, because we have a different type of sexual practices that we have, which is tantra. So we have female healers in our community in the art of tantra. Only biological men and women can do tantra. So that would automatically mean that she would do healing work on men in the community, right? So this makes a unique setup for our growing community, right? In which it would be, feasible if a woman have a life path, right? Like with having multiple husbands, because she has these extraordinary gifts as a healer, right? And we do not deny a woman's right to evolve her soul, if that's her life path. But of course, my main thing is that she has to know how to master husband sharing first, right? You don't skip a school, right? You don't just go from, oh, I never lived, with women in the community sharing my husband, but I think I'm about to do that. Well, that's not how it works. You have to go through stages now, but it's a pathway, right? It's a pathway there. So I think functional polyamory is really a graduation for me, for women once they learn functional husband sharing and they can work in a community with sister wives. Otherwise, she's just coming from her ego. But likewise to men who who do that out of ego driven desires. I've seen this, and I have clients that I work with in the Mahi community with Black women they were African women who grew up in polygamous communities in Africa, one from Nigeria, one from Cameroon, and one that I met on my journeys from Senegal. And they all told me about their experiences growing up in these polygamous communities. And they said, they was like, I have not seen this work well. And it may have some of the most resistance to it. Like when we talk about it, and I hear their husbands' goals and their visions, and I'm like, wow, they're even a little bit more resistant than some of the Black American sisters that I meet. And I'm like, what is this resistance? And when I talk to them about it, I'm like, can you describe what was that like? They go through the stories with me, right? And they're like, one sister from Cameroon, she's like, yeah, like a little, like you turn 12 years old and it's like, here, just get married off, right? And the way she described it, and she's so emotionally unavailable. And that's what I was talking to, her husband about. And I was like, well, this is really supposed to be about a woman's fulfillment. Like the women are supposed to be fulfilled and happy. You don't want a community of unhappy women. So it's like, it's about duty, it's about obligation, it's about spousal development, but it's also about, honoring people's sovereignty. And we're not looking at women as objects and property. That's not why, even if a man had resources, he would sabotage a healthy, functional, polygamous dynamic because he possesses wives. So that's when I started to shift my language into functional polyamory, because even when you're practicing functional polyamory, it does not mean that you are having multiple relationships that are all sexual based. It could mean just any type of intimate relationship in group economics. You could be doing business with multiple, women in your community, and that's not sexual based, right? But where, have the opposite sex, sometimes, that could develop into a more intimate, relationship or a sexual relationship, but this gets into another piece of ownership, and that's what we're trying to get shift into the new world that we're entering to, which is living more sovereign as human beings, where this concept of ownership of our mates, have to shed on both men and women. And this just comes, with my work, and that's why I use the language functional polyamory, because we're looking at multiple bloodlines, multiple generations to come. And you don't want that. You don't want multiple generations down the road and, your descendants are so resistant to this idea of family because they grew up with polygamy, with the spirit of it lost. And that's been lost down because you're just popping out children and thinking that you own your wives. That's not why you do polygamy.
Indeed. Now, this conversation was scheduled for just a short introduction.
Mm-hmm.
So we've come to the end of that, but I want to first and foremost thank Sister Jasiri Hoppy Ranut out of Detroit, D-Town represent. She is the one who was like, you should get Sister Asha, on your platform, because we've talked about these kind of dynamics, and I've come across you just randomly, as I'm in various different communities. I just watch for the most part. I don't converse because I just like to see where everyone's at. And so she had a few questions, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Me asking, and I won't take up too much of your time. And so the first question I'll just ask too is, she asked, why is high level polyamory for community building and intergenerationality or intergenerationally so very important to our empowerment in the flow of essentially Black power and economic growth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So that has a lot to do with what we represent in the Mahi community is a pathway to transcend your earthly cycles, right? Like we're here on earth, but we're not meant to just stay here, right? Like we're meant to learn lessons and leave, right? Like that's to continue on and go back to, the infinite source, right? So with this family structure, you're able to keep egos in check. That's why I don't use polygyny, right? We talk about the concept of functional polyamory, right? We have wife trainings for that, but women who, of course, I talk about that on both sides of reciprocity, working in, a structure like this where egos are in check. You have a sisterhood, you have a brotherhood. Women are able to operate and share husbands and do group economics. Men who are meant to have paths like that and share, wives or maybe higher, ranking status of the community, and they can come together in leadership in the brotherhood. this will inevitably lead to people transcending their soul back into the infinite source and passing the schools, here on earth, right? We weren't meant to be locked down here. So it's about mastery of the soul.
Yes. And lastly, I'll ask this one. Some of these I think you kind of answered
Mm.
throughout our discourse. Um, so, how does coaching support sisters in cultivating femininity in a world that masculinizes Black women?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So this deals a lot with when sisters come together in this perspective of husband sharing and they can share collective resources, they see the bigger picture, right? They're committed to something greater than themselves, right? And the point of it is that we're talking about the slave financial matrix, you're trading time for money. Yeah, that you're going to be rewarded for being in your masculine because it's an enslavement, right? You want to transition, you use polyamory to transition into sovereignty. Sovereign women are feminine because they see the bigger picture. They can work up towards something that doesn't have the immediate reward right in front of their face, but later down the road, putting in that working community with their sister wives, they're able to see that big vision that leads into that heaven and the resources and everything that they, would desire, that a natural woman would, desire, which is family, community, and abundance.
Ashe, I appreciate greatly you taking time out of your busy day, and we're in the holiday season,
Mhm.
and so I know taking time away from family to discuss these things is I don't take it lightly. So I appreciate every moment, and I want to reinforce the fact that to contact our guest, Sister Asha Sekhmet, you can visit her at ashasekhmet.com. The link will be in the not comment section, in the description, and as well as her link tree and a direct link to her YouTube page. So you can see the series of videos, and so make sure if this is something you're interested in, to go to her website, book a coach's session.
Mhm.
Um, Sister, she also does fashion design. Look at the dresses, and she'll hook you up with a divine garment, for your pleasure. And if there's anything that you would want to say, in as we close, and so hopefully, we can get you on again, and we can expand this conversation more, probably deal with the tantra aspect, or we get you and your husband, to come on at the same time, and and discuss more. But if there's anything that you would want to say that we didn't cover, um, you can go ahead.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Brother Asarimhotep. I appreciate you for having me on and giving me the opportunity to share more about my work. I did want to add on because I wanted to make sure that I answered the sister question in full. So, for the coaching calls, we do group polyamory coaching calls, right? And that's where I share a lot of the information that we have about the Mahi Community Life System. Also, we have the Indigenous Wifehood Training. So, this is a course that women, can buy. They're on my website, and there's a part one, there's a part two, and that can start your initiations into what that indigenous wifehood would look like for being sovereign as a feminine woman, and rather than like what the sister was saying, trapped into the matrix and you being rewarded for being masculine, right? So that if you take a look at that indigenous wifehood course, you'll be set to go to be a sister wife asset. That's what I got to say.
Ashe. And with that said, we will see you next time. When that will be, I have no idea because, school is kicking my behind. But know that I'm growing in knowledge, and whatever I learn, y'all learn. So it'll be poured back into the community. So until then, Hotep, and y'all be easy. Peace.
Thank you, brother.
Tokyo wanna dose that. What's up? Feeling like I dropped the draw for and caught Uno. Came to kick the door with the game man judo. Pin game low, that's why they give me kudos. Inspired by the 3-0. 595, check it for pack light. Hit the turnpike, slide to a baseline. Gotta sound like I just hit the 8-5. Oh, I'm so ready, by enemies necessary. We gon' be legendary, hold up. About to grow the payrolls. If you see the vision and you're with it, you should say so. Cause we about building, elevating the millions.
This program was created with the love and support of all our Patreon members and subscribers. If you are not a member yet and would like to see more content like this, consider becoming a member today. The link is in the description of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated.